and welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. I've asked you here so that I may discuss the problem of violent video games and the effects they have on our youth. Violent video games have been linked to contributing to several school shootings and have also been linked to other acts of violence and aggression, like bullying and violence against women. An FBI report released in 2000 listed playing violent video games as a behavior associated with school shootings. These violent video games are desensitizing our youth to violent acts and even teaching them that violence is an appropriate way to settle conflict. Violent video games can alter a person's behavior and demeanor, especially with young minds. It is important to be aware of what your children are playing and watching so that you may guide them to make wiser choices and protect them from violent and vulgar images that could be damaging. As a Christian and a babysitter for children who play violent video games and a video game hobbyist, I understand the issue as I have personally seen the detrimental effects that violent video games have on children and the offensive content that is presented in the games, as it is not God-honoring. I will validate this statement first, talking about the content these video games hold, second, the effects they have on our youth, and third, I will discuss these violent video games and how they are not God-honoring. Let's get started. Most video games have become so violent that they even get the media's attention. With the release of the game called The Call of Duty, the media called into question its graphic, gory nature and disturbing imagery. It includes scenes of a terror attack that harmed several civilians and innocent children. Other games have been just as distasteful, like JFK Reloaded, which is a reenactment of the JFK assassination. Another one is the Super Columbine Massacre RPG, a reenactment of the tragic Columbine shooting. Kids have been flooded with violent imagery and are becoming desensitized to violent acts. In a legal hearing that was trying to put ratings on these violent video games, Attorney General Dan Lundgren of California attested that these violent games have a desensitizing impact on impressionable young minds. It would seem that the more violent the game is, the more popular and successful it will be. $13.26 billion was spent on video games last year, with the top sellers being violent video games like Call of Duty, which raked in $550 million alone. Violent video games are interactive, where usually the player associates him or herself with the character he is playing. The character is usually pretty violent, and due to the identification the player makes with the character, and due to the realistic graphics of these games, it could really increase the chance of youth violence. Which brings me to my second point. Violent video games can negatively affect children's ability to solve conflict through proper communication. They teach children that violence is an acceptable way of settling conflict. According to a 2009 study, youth who play violent video games have lower belief in the use of non-violent strategies and are less forgiving than players of non-violent video games. Players of violent video games may even associate enjoyment and exhilaration with the power to cause pain to others. In 2009 study, results showed that aggressive thoughts and feelings children experience while playing violent video games can last up to 4 minutes before returning to normal after playing the game. It also showed that physical effects like elevated heart rate and aggressive behavior can last up to 10 minutes before returning to the average level. Kids who played the video game called Grand Theft Auto, which features sexually explicit content and rewards behaviors such as theft and beating people to death, were 60% more likely to beat someone up than kids who didn't play violent video games. This brings me to my final point. God values love for one another, honesty, integrity, human life, compassion, and peace. Violent video games promote the exact opposite of God's values. It promotes crime, theft, murder, hate, dishonesty, and war. The Bible says in Proverbs 22:6, train up your child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. These violent video games are training children not God's way, but evil and corrupt ways that parents should not want their children to hold on to. Also, in Proverbs 4:23, it says, "Above all, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." I'm not a parent, but if I were, I wouldn't want my child's heart to flow with murder, hate, thievery, and dishonesty. This drives me to my conclusion. We see that violent video games contribute to behavioral problems, and have been linked with contributing to school shootings. We also looked at the content within these games and finally discussed how these violent games are not God-honoring. The solution to this problem is to understand how God views these violent games, which is corrupt, for they promote ungodly principles and teach and reward immoral behavior. We need to take action to promote children from this protect children from this violence by not allowing them to play these violent games. Violent video games are not God-honoring and can lead to reprobate minds, and it's our spiritual duty to guard youth's hearts from its violence. I encourage you all to be mindful of what video games your children are playing, and to keep violent video games away from them, so that you may save them from witnessing violent acts, and in doing so, honor God by not bringing in content that's offensive to Him. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all consider this problem. Thank you.